Hey everyone. So I've talked quite a lot about what kind of movies are my personal picks as some of the greats. But what about objectively speaking? I feel like there's a really hard thing to kind of think about for some people, or maybe just for me. When you're talking about somehow objectively something is, you're having to focus on an entire group of people. So, you can't just say this movie's great because I liked it. You gotta actually think about what it is publicly speaking. But sometimes it's usually based off of whether you want to focus on what a public rating service says, like Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes. They don't say much these days. But anyway, or you just want to be a real critic and actually look at the movie and actually try to analyze why you think it deserves credit or it deserves crap. What do I do when I talk about objectively speaking for films? It might be a little bit of a silly thing to say, but I usually focus on what IMDb ratings are for. I think IMDb ratings are, I talked before about how they are usually the most accurate when it comes to film ratings, in my opinion. You disagree with it because you think the movie's good and they don't give it that high state. But when it comes to actually thinking about what it is publicly for, you gotta actually take notice that it's not all about what you think of it. It's about what other fans say. And there are a lot of people who rate stuff on IMDb, so I like to think that there is a smart subject towards that. Same with Letterboxd. I think Letterboxd is a close second to accurate ratings. So when it comes to how a movie's rated on IMDb, or even for some Letterboxd, I think that is a good way to say how a movie is objectively, even if, you don't agree with it yourself. But anyway, when it comes to the top 10 best movies of all time, according to IMDb, that's essentially the highest rated films. But, there's so many ratings. So here's what I'm focusing on. Anything that's had at least 10,000 people rating it. Because, you gotta have enough people to rate it, otherwise you can't, it's not much saying if only like 5 people are saying that it's a 10 out of 10. Now, I'm talking about stuff that at least 10,000 people have rated, because that's a good amount of number, isn't it? A good amount of people who have seen the movie have actually rated it. Even works for if there are some who don't actually consider a proper rating or just rating it this because whatever. But yeah, I think at least 10,000 votes qualifies for for the accurate rating of a movie on IMDb. So when talking about the top 10 best movies of all time according to IMDb, any movie that has at least 10,000 votes, and it's just the highest rated. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about my ranking of the top 10 list, except focusing on the top 10 list that excludes any movie that is off my preferences. I think I mentioned this before, but when I'm watching films and rating them, my focus is strictly on stuff that's English, that has English as the language in some way, is something that has released ever since the 60s. And with IMDb's top 10, there are some movies to it that are off of those preferences. So I'm talking about the top 10 list that doesn't include any of those types of films. Any movie that's completely foreign or from before the 60s won't count towards the top 10 list. For IMDb's top 10 best movies of all time list, it's, movies that are after the 60s. Movies that have come out since at least 1960 and have English as a language, or English languaged. So what I'm doing is I'm ranking these 10 movies that are on IMDb's top 10 list. I'll show to you where they rank on the top 10 list, and then of course talk about where it ranks on my ranking of them, where they fit into which ones I personally like the most and which ones I like the least. None of the movies on IMDb's top 10 list I actually dislike, so I'll tell you that. But some I like more than others, and my opinion of what are my personal picks aren't exactly the same as theirs. My top 10 list is not the same as their top 10 list. So here is my ranking of all the movies that are from the top 10 best movies of all time according to IMDb. As I like to put it, these are the greatest movies of all time, but my personal ranking of them.
Alright, so The Godfather Part II which in IMDb's top 10 lists is ranked number 6, is kind of slightly, just a little overrated. Alright, let me try to clarify that good. It is still a great movie. I do think it's great. But there are people who usually rank it as one of the best sequels of all time, one that usually is better than the first one. But I find it confusing because a lot of people who say it's better than the first one also do a top 10 list where Godfather 1 is ranked above. So, I don't know, it kind of gets confusing. Anyway, the first movie had a nice consistency to it. It was a little, it did a lot, but at the same time, the plot ran in a smooth pattern, sort of. Part 2, we continue the story of our main character, Michael Colon. Forgot how to pronounce his last. Michael Corleone? Someone Italian. We continue the story of him after all the tragedy that occurred first movie. But we also get frequent moments that show the origins of Vito Cor. I need to speak better Italian. The Godfather from the first movie, the Marlon Brando character. But yeah, Vito Corleone, I think is what his name is. Yeah, Corleone. I'm just gonna call it that. His origins are presented in this movie alongside the continuing present stories of Michael, and they kind of just take it randomly. It's kind of up to us to figure out which parts are the focus of Vito's origins and which parts are the focus of Michael's life. And I know it's fun to challenge the viewers. It does make for some of the great kind of films. At the same time, though, it kind of ruins the consistency with the movie. I mean, parts of his origin are great to see. And honestly, I think I preferred if it was just his origins presented with frequent cuts to Michael as he's, I don't know, going alongside thinking about it or whatever. I mean, that is kind of what happens, except his story gets talked about a lot too, and I just don't think it's as interesting. I mean, it still provides some great drama, but not as great of drama as the stuff we get to see with Vito's life. I mean, his origins are amazing. They took the spotlight, except they then continue to put focus on Michael's current life, which, again, to me, aren't really as interesting. If I'm being honest, The Godfather Part II is still a great movie. But to all those who say it's superior to the first one, I can't really agree. I think it's just a fine. I think it's just a fine sequel. It's a great movie, but the first one still is better. Still, I don't know. I just feel like this sequel gets talked about a little too much. It's a great movie in general, but is it really? I don't really see it as one of the best sequels ever. So, Fight Club, ranked number 9 on IMDb's list, is another film that I'm surprised to see this much praise towards. But at the same time, it makes sense. It's crazy to see that a movie that originally was a box office failure, it didn't really have much people praising it until it eventually, to this day, nowadays, people are praising it a lot. But funny thing about this movie, it's definitely a pretty good example of what you would call a cult classic. It's one of those dystopian films that focuses on this underground fight club, which apparently has created a disaster in society, and again has pretty much presented to this very dystopian, unhealthy territory that has all been caused by what's apparently a very dangerous and well-loved part group of club, sort of. A fight club, yeah. It's a fight club. Everyone fights or whatever. They all should have had their man time, but it ends up pretty much taking over an entire society, and everyone, it pretty much just destroys the world, basically. I think it's a great commentary in a way. I do definitely think it does what it sets out to in a pretty interesting and fun manner. And looking back, I do agree that Fight Club does deserve the amount of praise it gets. And I think it's pretty neat to see it be ranked this high as one of the best films out there. Because, yeah, there is something pretty well put together about it. To me, I feel like I just wasn't getting into it entirely. It did kind of get a little ridiculous at times. I know the ridiculousness is supposed to tie into the social commentary, but still, I feel like its ridiculousness didn't need to be there. And to me, I feel like the movie's pacing with what it sets out to tell gets too slow or too what are we doing here exactly kind of moments. Again, maybe I'll get more interested in it if I do a rewatch. That's something I might do later on. I might rewatch this movie at some point in the future, and maybe my opinion will get better. But for now, I just have to say, great movie, but I didn't get into everything to it like everyone else did. Now, Inception, this movie does all it can to be a confusing film. And I think the fact that the confusingness is a big factor into this film's story is what makes me actually really love this movie so much. This film focuses on dream reality, basically. A man who can enter people's dreams, who pretty much kind of goes around this world where he finds out what's real and what's a dream. He's kind of like a dream traveler, basically, in a way. It's all sorts of mess. The man Christopher Nolan was just all for being like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to warp your minds. What do you think is a dream is actually real. What you think is real is actually a dream." But you see, what I love about this movie is that it doesn't just go that route, just being like, "Okay, so this is real and this is a dream." It doesn't just try to do that back to back. No, this movie actually does tell a consistent story. We get some great drama, and I love the elements. I love all the sci-fi elements where they actually portray how dreams are illusions to the minds. They show both sides of dreams, whether it's a dream that's just plain out confusing and not really relevant to anything, or one that is relevant to stuff. It does both sides, and I do think the warping of the minds for us and for the characters is pretty fun to watch. This film's got some pretty memorable, fun characters, and the story is just a chaotic mess, but it's the great kind of chaotic mess. I don't know. I think this movie is pretty amazing. I do agree that it's up there as one of Nolan's best. It being on the top 10 best movies of all time is no surprise in my opinion. Now here is the Godfather film itself. It is ranked number 2 on IMDb's list. Most moviegoers will say that this definitely is usually known as the best movie of all time. So, yeah, it's number 2 on IMDb's list. Most people would just be like, alright, well, in that case, IMDb, you're trash, you're not relevant. But, I don't know, I think, movies come and movies go. Anyway, Godfather is beloved by many. It is considered the best movie of all time. To me, however, yeah, you notice I have it ranked this high. This isn't me saying that the movie has a lot of awful things about it. It doesn't. No, it's got good heart to it. The story is pretty mature. It's a very well put together story. I do agree that the movie does great at setting things up, giving us likable characters, unlikable characters, and a situation of events that practically destroy a man's life. A man who's trying to enjoy a wedding, but it becomes a terrible mob situation. It's kind of just a lot of mature, grown up kind of moments in a simple drama. Young me would have just said, boring, where's the action coming in? But when you get older, you do realize that a movie is supposed to keep you invested, not, entertain with eye candy. And I think this movie proves great at that. This movie probably is one of the best examples of showing off that, you don't have to just do eye candy to make a movie work as beloved. Beloved movies come from how enjoyable their characters are, how investing the story is, and just how well put together all the elements for the film are. And that's pretty much what this movie is for. It's probably why a lot of people say this is the best movie of all time, because it takes every element of what we are supposed to love about a film and makes sure that we have it. And it does. My issue with it and why it's ranked at number 7 is, while the story does run, it gets a little rough at times. I feel like the consistency with the plot takes a few non-linear paths during a few times, especially closer to the end. I don't know, maybe it's just how I view it, but I feel like this movie's plot kind of goes too many ways and ends up becoming non-linear by the second half. That might just be what I think of it. I think a better way to put it is parts of the movie insist on himself. That's probably the best way I can describe my whole flaw with this movie. And there's parts of it that just insist upon themselves. I mean, look, it's still an amazing movie. I still really love it. And I do understand why people call it one of the best movies of all time. But there's the non-linearity of it all is why I don't think of it as one of my personal favorites. Oh man, good old Steven Spielberg. I feel like at the time, all we could think about with Spielberg is making whimsical films. Films that provide us with such joy and imagination. But he has proven to us a bunch of times back then that he was intending to make sure that stories will have a good sense of drama to them. And he decided to show that off the most with this film. Schindler's List is pretty much one of the most perfect movies I've ever seen. Despite it being number 6 on the list, it is like, I don't really recall many flaws with this movie. I mean, historical wise, I'm not a historian, so I'm not going to criticize this movie for getting things wrong about history. Because all the stuff it says is so believable and so well acted and pasted that it really does feel like a believable story. So if you are a historian who says, "Oh, this movie's got stuff wrong," I don't know how many people can believe you, because it really does create this environment. It shows the world off in black and white. It's a black and white movie, yet only the past segments, the parts that the movie that takes place during its time period, the Holocaust, is in black and white. This movie flashes forward to the present where it's all in color. There's even a moment of a little girl who has red color on her. It's a really nice symbolization. I think that's just a beautiful aspect to the film. It's just a really well put together story. I honestly, a part of me sometimes sees this as better than The Godfather. I mean, objectively speaking, The Godfather has taken its toll, but to me, Schindler's List just has the least amount of problems to it. It's really beautiful. It's number 6, so you think that because it's ranked this high, there are problems with it. But to me, not really. There's just other films I find to be a bit more enjoyable in the mix. Maybe it's just because this one's longer or whatever, or not as action packed or with the biggest variety of memorable characters or scenes. It's got some scenes that are iconic and some characters that are iconic, but it's just its overall world is and setup is beautifully done. So Steven Spielberg deserved everything he got for this movie, and he deserves to be called the greatest director of all time because of films like this. And here is, of course, The Dark Knight. Ooh, this is a classic. It's fun to note that this movie is ranked so high on IMDb's top 10 list, and when going by their ranking of what are the best movies of all time, this ranks at number 3. It's that great. A superhero movie about Batman is this amazing. But you know what? I totally buy it. This film is practically just the center point for how dark and how maturely handled superhero movies can get. When you think of a superhero movie, usually all you can think of is superhero punch fights crimes, wears funny suits, saves the day, everybody loves him. But this movie really does all it can with Batman. It makes sure that Batman gets the treatment of being the most violent, yet also well-meanful and necessary superhero in its city. It's a city, of course, that's just full of crime everywhere. A city where there's crime fighting every hour of the day. And then, of course, there's the Joker himself, who, of course, is the scariest he's ever been for this movie. This movie just gives us all the iconic Batman characters, a bunch of other iconic characters, and makes for a very mature, violent, serious film to it. And that's why I believe it deserves to be ranked this much as one of the best movies ever. Because it really does so much with something that seems too silly to make this dark. Dark Knight is just a masterpiece. It's really beautiful. The action's amazing. The acting's incredible. The story takes a very exciting, great turn. It manages to be both exciting and maturely handled. And we don't see a lot of superhero movies do that. So, when it comes to what superhero movies can break the limits and be as amazing as they can,
I think Dark Knight does some of the best job at it. Forrest Gump. My man Tom Hanks. He's always been my favorite actor of all time. I've talked enough about this movie, I feel like. I really don't think there's much more I can say. It's a beautiful story about the life of a man who doesn't have this intelligence, but he's able to become a very popular man during the century. He does so much with his life. He achieves so many things. He applies for a lot, and he ends up becoming talked about by everyone and lives through the century being the most beloved by a lot of people. It's beautifully done. It's wholesome. It's emotional. It's comedic even at times. It's just a very wholesome movie. It's probably one of the most feel-good movies of all time. It's one of those films that if you don't like it, you don't have a soul. Okay, that's probably ours. There probably are people out there who have their reasons for not liking it. But to me, it's just impossible not to smile to. I mean, it's just one of those films that you really feel a lot of comfort when sitting through. There are a lot of dramatic moments, but it makes up for it by making sure the plot continues running and that our character never has a moment of us to dislike him. He's just one of the most perfect characters ever. And again, I've said enough about it before, so I really don't think there's much more I can say. Lord of the Rings, what a masterpiece, right? Yeah, I made the point clear, haven't I? The Lord of the Rings is a franchise of movies, or I guess better yet, just a trilogy in general. All three movies tell a great, exciting, jam-packed, adventurous, amazing, three-part structured story ever. In terms of the books, I've only ever read the first one. I've never read any of the other Lord of the Rings books. The only Middle Earth based book I've read is The Fellowship of the Ring, so that's probably not a good thing for book lovers. But for film lovers, this movie does achieve so much. It's like everything I would love to see in a movie. I'm a huge fan of adventure films. This movie's an adventure. I'm a huge fan of well put together and badass action. This movie has it. I'm a good fan of comedic reliefs. This movie has that too. I love casting that is incredible to make up these fantasy fictional characters. This movie has that. A whole entirely fictional world. Just a whole setup of excitement and danger. Violence even. It's full of everything. It's like a masterpiece in a way. When I first saw this movie, I was just expecting to be like, alright, just a simple story. But I came out of it thinking it really did not need to do this much. It really did not need to be this awesome. But it was. I was amazed with it. I thought because it was so long it would come off as too boring, but no. It kept me entertained. I adored it. And I still adore it to this day. Now, Shawshank Redemption, according to IMDb, is the greatest movie of all time. You know what, though? I think it probably really is. This movie really is just the most perfectly structured story out there. You really can't go wrong with how emotionally investing, wholesome, and important this film is. The story of a friendship that occurs in a very nasty, well put together prison that ends in a man who creates a happy environment to prison mates and manages to make an escape, putting the prison in jeopardy, saving everybody he's become friends with, and showing us the meaning of who's really the right and the wrong in the cases of when it comes to committing crime or, wherever you come part for. It's like really investing for a character who should come off as a douchebag, but instead is impossible to have bad opinions on. Same with pretty much every other character in this movie, outside of the people who worked for the prison, to be honest. But no, it's got a narration, it's got a great setup, the characters are all lovable. There's even a bit of adventure to it, even though it's not a big factor, and it's all pretty much presented in the most genius way ever. So you know what? Screw it. This really does make sense as being the best movie of all time. I agree with IMDb. It's only number 2 for me, but objectively speaking, I think there's a good reason to call this movie the best. Because you can't get any more perfect of a written story than what this movie does. It doesn't throw in too much like Godfather does. That movie, I guess, throws in a lot of plot elements, but this movie makes sure to keep the focus on just this one. So I think for that matter, it does deserve this respect. My personal number one, however, is The Lord of the Rings, naturally. The final one, Return of the King, where the adventure ends. It's always the endings that make for the best types of stories. But this ending really does make sure to capture as much as it can. It gives us all the action, all the adventure, all the interest, the characters, and all the just every other aspect about these movies, and make sure it's all presented in its greatest here. It amazed me. Okay, ending the story off really left a nice feeling for me. Everything concluded. We got incredible action out of it. They were able to continue off with some great scenes of action. The adventure was able to continue going, no stopping. The villain defeat, it was amazing. It felt very emotional at times. It actually kind of made me cry for a little bit. I felt completed when watching this movie. I didn't just feel as the movie was completed. I personally felt completed. I have an adoring for this movie. Looking at this poster and just looking at the poster that I have in my room, I have the poster in my room because of how much I love Lord of the Rings and how much I think the third movie does such a great job with finishing off this trilogy and giving us all the elements that make these movies masterpieces and finish them off entirely here. It really does make sense that these are considered the best movies of all time. One of the best movies of all time, at least. For IMDb's case, this one's only number 4, but still, they're beautiful. Beautiful movies. I'll always be a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm a Star Wars fan, a Spider-Man fan, a Batman fan, and a Lord of the Rings fan. Can't get any more white dude than that. Alright, so one thing I thought I'd go ahead and do is bring up honorable mentions. 4 movies that are based on what aren't my preferences, but if I didn't have them, would be part of IMDb's top 10. These are part of IMDb's top 10 list. Except I was talking about how I'm only focusing on movies that are for my preference, being films that have English in them and films that have been released ever since the 60s. These are 4 movies that made IMDb's original top 10 lists that are off my preference. That being, these are foreign films or movies that were released before the 60s. And those are The Chaos Class, a Turkish comedy film from the 70s. I don't know many people who've watched it, but apparently enough to make this an amazing film for IMDb users. There's Ramayana, I don't know, some Egyptian anime film. I don't really care for watching anime at all anyway, so we'll see that anyway. 12 Angry Men. I did watch this movie once for a Thanksgiving period, so it's a movie I have sort of seen, just didn't really get a full gesture towards when rating it or talking about it. But it being the one of the greatest out there is pretty understandable. It's a pretty amazing setup. And then there's Attack on Titan. Apparently the finale to this series was made as a feature film, and it's this high rated on IMDb. If you're an anime fan, you probably have a good opinion on Attack on Titan, which I am not. Still, on the right is the general top 10 list of what are the best movies of all time, according to IMDb. And for my list, of course, I was focusing on ranking what are the 10 best movies of all time based on what were my preferences. Because I have seen those. I have seen all 10 of the top 10 best movies according to IMDb, which were English and released ever since the 60s. These are the ones that aren't that, but made up the general list. So there it is right there. Yeah. You agree with it? You would have to see every movie to agree with it. And if you have seen The Chaos Class or Ramayana, then you can have an opinion on this. But if you haven't seen them, then you can't say that this list is inaccurate, because that would imply that you think some movies aren't that great. I can't say it's accurate or inaccurate because I, of course, have not seen all these movies. But I can say that for the top 10 list that is based off of my preferences, which are every movie I have seen, I think it's pretty well accurate. I think it's pretty good to focus on when talking about the best movies of all time. I think the ones I you saw on this list are fair. I think it's a fair best movies of all time list. If you think it's not fair, if you think there is another list that should be considered, you go ahead and comment. Don't just comment what you think are your personal favorite movies. Comment what you think is a objectively better ranking of the top 10 best movies of all time. Do that. I dare you. I dare you hard.